In the previous video, we made all of the input fields required, and now we're going to add two more validations, one for the email and one for the password. For the email, we want to make sure it has a valid format, so when the user types something like this, we print an error message asking for a valid email. For the password, we want to make sure it is at least 6 characters long, and if the user types less than 6, we print another error. So let's go ahead and do that. The first thing you want to do is make sure you have a nonvalidate attribute with the value of true in the form element. The reason we are doing this is because we want to prevent a browser validation when the email format is not correct. You can find more info about it in the description below. Once we do that, let's scroll down to our validate form method. In the if statement, where we're validating if our email exists, we're going to add an else if block. And we want to do something like this. We will pass the email value to the validate email method in order to check whether the email is valid or not. And if it is not, we push a string message to the errors list array. Now, let's add our validate email method. I have that method on my clipboard, so I'm just going to paste it here. In this method, we just have a regular expression, and we test the email we're passing as an argument against that regular expression. So here, it will return a boolean. So before checking in the browser if everything is okay, let's do a quick recap of what we added. In the form element, we added a nonvalidate attribute and set its value to true. Then, in the if statement, where we're validating if our email exists, we added an else if block, where we pass a validate email method to check if the email format is valid. Now, let's save our code and go to the browser to check if it is working as expected. I'll add an invalid email to check if the validation works. And, sure enough, it prints an error message if the email is invalid. And if I add a valid email here, it prompts the alert message, as expected. Perfect. Now, let's add a minimum length validation to the password. We want to make sure it is at least 6 characters long. And if the user types less than 6, we print another error. Let's go back to our code and, in the if statement where we're validating if the password exists, we're going to add an else if block. And we will check if the length of the password is less than 6. And if it is, we push an error message to the errors list array. Let's save our code and go to the browser to check if it is working as expected. I'm going to add a name, a valid email, and a password with less than 6 characters. Submit the form, and sure enough, it prints an error message if the password length has less than 6 characters. But if I add 6 or more characters, it prompts the alert message. Awesome! So far, our validation is working as expected. In the next and last video of this mini course series, we're going to reuse the validation code we just wrote and use it in our login form as well.